I'm unemployed. Do you think I'm actually thriving? I'm the first person to say, I hit the ground running, pick myself up again. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm the super motivated Duracell bunny that is going to go out there and create her own thing. But this one big pillar, if you're unemployed, you can suddenly feel like you're the biggest loser in the room.
I think society gives us this fear of being unemployed.
When you move abroad, your sense of identity shifts and how people perceive
hmm
you. And the things that you found a sense of pride in kind of vanish. And so you're kind of starting from scratch.
And imposter syndrome is a big thing over here. No matter how good you are, there are always people who are better. You always think that you're not doing enough.
The job situation, the relationship to work, I feel like is the same thing.
hmm
You know, when you break up with someone, you feel better than if someone broke up with you.
Would you say that this is easier or harder being abroad?
Hi, everyone. This is Helena.
And this is Philip. And you're listening to another episode of the growth series of the Where Boundaries Dissolve podcast.
A podcast on transformation so that we get better at unleashing and unlocking what makes us unique so we can stand in our power, lead from a place of purpose, and take our roles in society and in business to the next level and make this world a better place.
That sounds so good. Today we're talking about how you can thrive when you move abroad. And for me, as a leader in tech, Germany's top 40 under 40, I left my home country, moved to Silicon Valley, California. I think we can share a lot of learnings today about what are the hard things about it, what are the good things about it. And I also want to discuss a little bit what thriving really means. If this means making a lot of money or if it means to live your best life in all the other areas that are maybe not money related. So yeah, let's unpack this.
Let's unpack this. Maybe we should give some background information as to why you mentioned how we need to define thriving. Just for context, guys, before we got onto the podcast, I was second doubting the topic. I was like, Philip, I don't know if I can talk about this right now. He was like, why? I was like, I'm unemployed. Do you think I'm actually thriving? Like, I don't know that I should be. I mean, they're the shoulds. I'm trying to take those away from my vocabulary, but you know, it doesn't feel like I'm thriving when it's weird, right? Because you can know that thriving, I mean, as you say, what's the definition of thriving, right? You can be thriving in so many different areas of your life. But this one big pillar, if you're unemployed, you can suddenly feel like you're the biggest loser in the room. Like, honestly, you
Yeah.
know? So I'm very excited to unpack this topic with you and shed some perspective because I think the timing is very good and you're the right person to be talking with about this because I always feel better after our conversation. So I'm very
I love
excited.
to hear that, and I hope our listeners feel the same way. And thanks for your openness. Thanks for sharing that. Uh, I think
Always.
I think society gives us this fear of being unemployed, and I think especially our generation and our parents, being unemployed is
Yeah.
like you don't want to go through that. But if you look at, I don't know, sports or anything like taking a break or being out for a couple months and then coming back stronger and in a better place, I think that's something pretty normal. It
hmm
sometimes it has to happen to just get your coordinates right and do it. And I also think that thriving means thriving in different pieces of your life. And I always categorize that you have your personal life where you have family, friends, your partner. You have your health where you want to be fit, you want to be healthy, you want to be pain free. And then you have your professional life. And I always try to have a balance between these three. So, how are the other two?
So health at the moment, I mean, the minute I got unemployed and I was going through, so there was a moment, there was like a lot of stress evolving around that and family issues happening at the same time. So that was tough. You know, that was just like, and I got sick, like I physically got sick. And there's scientific research that shows that the faster things change and the more is at stake, that it actually starts to have physical implications on you. Like one example, because I'm reading this book on transitions, and the author, he talks about this one study that goes in and analyzes people who got promoted. And even if you get promoted too fast, that level of stress and things being at stake makes people physically ill.
Wow.
And yeah, it's very interesting, right? And so as I was going through all of that, my health deteriorated for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got
Mm-hmm.
sick. I'm back in a really good space. I've really leaned into dancing because I told myself, okay, if I feel exhausted and depleted, how can I fall in love with my
Mm-hmm.
life in other areas and really reignite my sense of passion and enthusiasm and motivation? Because that's where I want to live from when I make decisions, right? I don't want to be looking for a job from a place of depletion. And so I've really been leaning into the dance aspect again. And I had such a great dance class. I loved the song. I was really just, okay, let me just feel the motions and not judge myself for what it looks like and what it doesn't. Let me just be here. And so, and dance is such an extreme sport, it's high intensity. And so I'm just really grateful that my body is able to do that and that it's keeping up and that I'm still growing and that, because for some reason I thought, oh, when you reach 30 and you start moving closer to 40, that's when, things start to change and everything. You get older, but like health-wise
Very
thriving,
good.
relationship-wise also thriving. So I guess, you can say and my friends, like all my friends, and that was a realization I had last week as well, are thriving at the moment. They're all doing so
And
well. And that was just so
mm-hmm.
nice to just be like, oh, I have friends that are doing amazing things in
Mm-hmm.
life. I'm so proud of them. Let me just lean into that and be excited for them. And my little song and dance and routine will be back in due time. Let me
Absolutely.
just bask in this. I don't know.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
we talked about this in the last episode when we said when you're going downhill,
Right.
enjoy the ride. And
Oh my God.
I think
Yes.
you're in that stage where you want to grind, you want to hustle, but
Yeah.
you have to relocate the right opportunity now. And those things
Yeah.
happen. I've been there in my life. I Right out of college, I chose a job offer, the first one I got. I thought it was the right thing. I moved through Germany to Berlin, started the job, and after 2 months, I realized that this is not what I want. I made good money. It was a full sales role, 150 cold calls a day, but
Oh,
mhm,
really? I didn't realize it was sales
most people
role.
most
Yeah.
people don't know that part of my journey. And I made the decision to quit after 3 months. I said, I have the feeling that I can do better. I have the feeling that I can find something else that is more aligned with my values and with what I want to do, which is in the field of building businesses, innovation, venture building. And I moved back to my parents' house. I was
Yeah.
officially unemployed for 4 months. And I got these
Hmm.
messages from like employment office to like, hey, please come in, see us. We want to find you the job. Now, I focused on activity. So I sent out 5 applications a day. And after 4 months, I was able to choose between Siemens, AWS, and Deloitte at that point. And this is how I got into Siemens. But that moment where you decide to leave a job without actually having a job, I
Hmm.
feel you. It's hard.
That's
But what helped me a lot is to focus on the activity I can do every day to get to where I want to be.
hmm
If you have something you want to do, put it down to what you can do on a daily basis. Enjoy the pieces of your life that are maybe going well. Channel the
hmm
energy from that into the things that need to happen in that field where you want to be better. And then
hmm
trust the process. 2, 3 months later, everything
Yeah.
could be more than amazing and better than ever before.
I think there's something to be said about change that you evoke and change that has been imposed on you
Yeah, good
and how
point.
you feel.
Good point.
There's power within making the
Mm-hmm.
decision. When you break up with someone, you feel better than if someone broke up with you. And the job situation, the relationship to work, I feel like is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If they break up with you, it's you kind of, even if you knew things were not going the way you wanted and you anticipated that this was going to happen and you're actually trying to plan your own
Hmm.
exit. Like in my case, I could sense things were just not going the way I'd anticipated them to. And so there was a part of me is like, I thought we'd somehow turned a corner, but then I was like, this is really, it just doesn't seem like there's a market for it. Like there's not enough pull. And so I was thinking, okay, well, what do I do
Yeah.
next? And then I got laid off. And that was like, you just kind of take a hit to your knees where you're like, oh. And so now, when you talk about, oh, 5 applications per day, that thought exhausts me. Like I'm at a point where I'm just like, I don't know that I have it within me right now
Hmm.
to do that. And I'm really struggling with that because I'm like you. I'm the first person to say, I hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like, I pick myself up again. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is like, I'm the super motivated, Duracell bunny that is going to go out there and create her own thing because that's who I am. I'm very ambitious. I'm very driven. I'm typically very
Hmm.
enthused. But now I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? What did I even do last year? Like, why did I go? I'm questioning
Hmm.
everything. And I feel like I'm in a space where it's just really empty. And it's funny because as the universe has it, right? The 2 days after I got laid off, I was introduced and had a conversation with Nick Craig, who's written a book on
Hmm.
purpose. And the foreword of that book was written by Brene Brown. So it's quite a big deal. And I was in this meeting and I was just like, why am I here? Why is this person talking to
Hmm.
me? Like he's worked with Ben and Jerry's leadership. He's worked like with countless leaders across the world to help them lead from a place of purpose, which means, and his definition of purpose is you can't be fired from your purpose. This is something that you operate from your place of unique
Hmm.
strength and your uniqueness. And when you do that, you're actually constantly in a growth mindset because you're within your authenticity, within your power, and you're constantly curious and constantly seeking to grow. But you have to kind of know what that space is where your uniqueness is really
Hmm.
needed. Anyway, he recommended a bunch of books to me, and he was a great sparring partner. And he was like, I challenge you to fill that void and make it as juicy as you can, to kind of really lean into this transition and to let go of all of this old stuff and to clear the slate and to then start again from a place of strength. And so I'm trying to embrace that. I'm trying to like lean into this void, and I honestly still don't know what that means. Like whether I'm thinking of whether I should take myself to Hawaii. My parents are going to visit as well. I'm doing a lot of journaling on what it is that I'm trying to let go of and what's that new identity and also what is my purpose so that I can have that clearly defined. But it also just feels so weird to not be working. I'm so used
It gives us
to
a
feeling
rhythm. It gives us
it's a rhythm.
work itself
Yeah.
gives people purpose.
And a sense of
Yes.
accomplishment. Like when you're in a room with people and you're doing something and you feel the progress and you've put it in, like that feels
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
right? But I can't just be in a kind of like you were saying, like this whole notion of taking a break to reorient ourselves and not just get into the
Next
to
best
the
thing.
to the wheel and just keep
Yeah.
running. Yeah, exactly. Like what's the direction that I'm taking?
Yeah.
Like.
Taking this back to our topic today, would you say that this is easier or harder being abroad? How do you feel?
Well, I think really great segue because literally in my brain I was just like, what are we talking about today? How did we end up talking about the same thing we're talking about last
No,
week?
this is okay.
Oh, thanks for that. What do we need to thrive abroad? And how is this easier at home or abroad? Honestly, I feel like being in LA, it's easier going through this because the market is much bigger.
Mm.
Like the market in Switzerland, it's so finance, insurance, banking, like those are like the core pillars. And then this, I think the second biggest contributor to GDP is like
Hmm.
tourism. And so, it's like it's
Difficult.
just not the real
Yeah.
economies that are there for me. And so being in LA, at least I'm just like, well, pick and choose. Like you can literally go, I can go into tech. The tech industry is pretty big here. I could go into entertainment. I could, like, there's a lot of things that I could do. So from that point of view, opportunity point of view, I think I'm in the right place. And luckily for me, this is happening almost 2 years into my abroad experience, meaning that I have
You
relationships
have
that
your
I can
network.
lean
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
and I think that's an important one. Had I gone through this a year ago, it would have been harder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think network is really important, that you build a community of people that you trust, that you have access to. And so my podcast gives me access to that. Existing network gives me access to that, and my new friends and
Mm-hmm.
relationships. So having family through my partner
Mm-hmm.
has been just like
So that then
amazing.
would be
And
the first takeaway. If you want to thrive abroad, you have to build a network
community.
as fast as possible.
Yeah. Don't be that expat that just sits there and is like, oh, I'm going to be here maybe for 3 years, maybe five, and so I'm just going to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, go out there and meet people.
Yeah.
Like, when I see you golfing and playing tennis, like, you're interacting with people, you're trying to know people, you have your YouTube channel, you're connecting with people. Like, I think that's really, really important
Yeah. I would say it's the
to do
game
that.
changer, because my situation right now, I haven't been home, which means Germany, for more than a year now. And I will
Wow.
be home over Christmas. So I'm really looking forward to that. I never
Yeah.
thought that I would say that I'm looking forward to leaving California during winter and be in
Oh my
Germany
God.
for
Yeah.
4 weeks. But that feeling of home and family is something that um, I'm I'm missing. To be honest, I
Yeah.
never thought that I would be that person, but I do.
No, I didn't either, because you said that in that first conversation. You were like, "I think this is like you and my wife have that in
Yeah,
common. Like you guys are more connected back,
yeah,
the strings are
yeah,
stronger." And you're like, "Not
yeah. But
me."
I feel like, especially here in Silicon Valley, I live in this bubble, right? And imposter syndrome is a big thing over here, because no matter how good you are, there are always people who are better.
Right,
And you always think that you're not doing enough. And they're now OpenAI launched this new AI feature here and there, and boom, and like you see these news every single day. TechCrunch is always about a
right.
company that is less than 5 miles away. And
Wow.
you're
Yeah,
in this constant process of insanely, insanely good people. And for me, going home shows me how far I did come. Like this whole journey we talked about, moving abroad, my vision to move to Silicon Valley, and the story of the goldfish and the glass, right? Right now, the glass is the biggest it can get in tech over here. But then when I go to my
hmm,
hometown, I realize that I jumped through so many glasses on the way to Silicon Valley.
right,
And this gives me so much energy. So every time I return from a trip like that, I return full of gratefulness for what I already have. And I'm
right.
energized to just be on the level that I am and work towards growth in the future. But I don't feel bad about being where I am. And I think this connection, so that will be my takeaway too, the connection to where you started and to your hometown, I think that helps me thrive a lot. Having a child changed that for me. Like
Yeah. In what way?
before having a child, I was always looking at the future and I wasn't really mindful and living in the moment. But as soon as,
Really?
yeah, 100%. I did enjoy my day-to-day life, but I always lived for the future. But then the moment when you have your child in your arms and time just stops, it pretty much accelerates, but it feels like it stops. And then 4 hours are over, but you live in the moment. Your brain stops to think. Your brain stops to plan. Brain stops to worry. You're just
Hmm,
in that one moment and you're just thankful for what you have. So I
hmm.
always say that before it was about where do we have dinner? What fancy restaurant are we booking? And then sometimes that turned into a 1 hour conversation to plan the perfect evening. All
Right.
these things, they disappear and you're just home looking at your child and or playing with your child. And yeah, that mindfulness for me, it came really through that.
Hmm.
But the point you just said, I really love. And I have to be honest, I struggled with these things. I got that feedback from many people that I'm not patient enough. I always want to do one jump after the other, and I'm not grateful for what I have. But I think, again, especially when you move abroad, that is a major thing to consider, because usually when people move abroad, they move on a visa situation, on a 3-4 year contract. And if you have that character who wants to like grow fast and jump fast, 3-4 years can be a long time in one specific role. So I would
Yeah.
say, yes, always think of the future, always plan for the future, but especially when you're abroad, take in every single moment you have in that country and don't plan for the next step. Like if you're transferred to, I don't know, California, and then you plan to get transferred to Singapore. Well, guess what? Those 3 years, they're over. And maybe as soon as you leave the place that you lived in abroad, you will miss it. And people are always good at like saying, oh, when I'm home, this is going to be so good. Or when I'm in this country, this is going to be so good. And then when they're in that country, they're like, oh, the past was actually perfect. What was I doing? So especially abroad, I
Yeah.
would say try to live in the moment, take in the experiences. I can recommend having a child to do that, but that might be very non-inclusive.
Go abroad, have kids, you'll be amazing.
We're also very lucky, so I heard different stories. Having a kid can also be terrible.
Of course, it always depends on the context, right? But I think like if you are surrounding yourself with the right people,
Yes.
and you're curious and you want to meet new people, which is also like again, coming back to like going abroad and not just saying staying in your capsule in your bubble, but really like trying to go out and explore what is, in your case, what is Silicon Valley about? In my case, it's what is LA
Mm-hmm.
about, you know? And it's interesting because you're gonna, I don't know, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but when I first started meeting from LA, I noticed in what kind of a condensed bubble I was in Zurich. Because people, there's number one, there's such a high level of education in
Mm-hmm.
Zurich, but it's all in
Mm-hmm.
business. And in, you know, and so the conversation, it's very
Mm-hmm.
homogenic. So the conversations, it's easy to have conversations, it's easy to understand people's backgrounds. But in LA, there's jobs that I'd never even heard
Mm-hmm.
of. And so suddenly their world clashed with my world. They didn't understand what I'd accomplished. So there was no sense of, oh, wow, you've done this, this, and this. They're just like, oh, you do what exactly? And why is that relevant?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so I don't know. I think when you move abroad, your sense of identity shifts and how people perceive
Mm-hmm.
you, and the things that you found a sense of pride in kind of vanish. And so you're kind of starting from scratch in certain ways. In in your, not your brand, but just like
Identity. And yeah.
identity and valid and sense of validation. And so I think like being super grounded in yourself and not relying on the external validation all the time to feel good about yourself and to feel confident is important.
I really like that point. Didn't really happen for me because I moved from a tech bubble to a bigger tech bubble. So
Yeah,
it pretty much only accelerated.
right.
But I can imagine that LA can be like that or is like that because there are so many sources of income and sources of jobs that don't exist in other places. Yeah, interesting.
I have a question for you. How did you feel yourself expand within the most since moving to Silicon Valley?
Oh, that's a good point. I would say the number one change is the depth of my technical understanding. In Berlin, you talk about a business model, you talk about an idea, and then people are like, okay, this sounds cool. How are you going to make money? Or
Mhm.
what do customers say to this? And here,
Right.
people ask, how?
How are you going to
How are you
do
going to
that?
do that? And
Yeah.
that level of technical understanding, I would say that was the biggest adaptation over here. But the biggest change within me is that I understood that opportunities are just everywhere in this area. Where
Mhm.
in Berlin, maybe Zurich is the same, you have to go to like a networking event to run into somebody. And here it
Mhm.
happens at Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, in a cafe, on the golf course, on the tennis court. Everyone is doing something very interesting in that, let's say, in that bubble, of course. And the constant openness and alertness within myself, that is another change where I'm pretty much always on. Is that a good thing? I don't know. but I'm pretty much always on that networking growth. Like even when I go to the gym, everyone you talk to does something cool in my area. Or if you are in the
Mhm,
sauna, you start a
mhm.
conversation and it's like, yeah, where you work at? Yeah, I work in Siemens. The other guys at Nvidia. The other guys at Meta, and then you talk about AI. It happens constantly in this field, and I would say deeper technical experience and then the always on mentality. That was the biggest change for me. But that comes back to thriving here also meant to adapt to this. Just like you said, you have to understand the other people so that you are part of their interest. You are interesting. And I read this actually in a children's book, like How to Raise a Child. You want to raise children that are liked by other people. And if you move abroad, I would say that's my final takeaway. Try to be someone that is liked by other people. Like when in
Mhm.
Rome, do as the Romans do. If you want to have a good life, adapt to what people are saying, thinking, and doing in that field, and you'll have a great life.
And I would add to that, if you want other people to like you, it's easier if you like them first. So,
Good
and what I
point.
mean by
Good
that
point.
is see yourself as a sponge.
Yeah.
Like, you're moving abroad because you're a curious person. You're moving abroad because you want to explore, you want to grow, you want to experience a different, bigger life, right? Because otherwise, you wouldn't have the courage to do something like that. And you think it's because it is crazy. You're starting from
Yeah.
scratch, like you're building everything from scratch again, and you're far away from home. And so I would say see yourself as a sponge and what do you want to be absorbing? Who are you inside? And what do you want to become? Like for you, it was so good to move to Silicon Valley because you knew innovation, venture building. Like that's what I want to do. That's a thing that lights me up. Let me go to the most condensed space in the world that has
Yeah.
that. And you're so that being on all the time doesn't feel
No,
exhausting.
it's a
You're
dream come true.
actually interested.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you're just like, wow, I'm absorbing all this information and everything is feeding into this one goal that I have. And I'm not too sure what it's going to look like, that end state, but boy, I'm just absorbing everything. So I would say to the people who may be interested to move abroad and want to thrive, like, what are you interested in? What are you curious about? What's the space you want to evolve into and grow
Hmm.
into? And then go to that epicenter.
Hmm.
Like, it's kind of funny that I landed in LA with the podcast and my voice and all of these things. That's huge
It's a good
here,
match.
you know?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
don't choose the country and the palm trees, but choose the ecosystem that fits with your personality.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it.
Is there anything else that you think would be like relevant? Because we mentioned community, we mentioned networks, we mentioned being open, being a sponge, wanting to
Don't
choosing
lose
your
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 roots.
ecosystem.
Don't.
Don't lose your roots. Acknowledge how far you've
Yeah.
come.
I
Be
I
present.
think there's nothing to add.
Honestly, I'm just trying to think what is something that I can apply to my own situation right now. Like, what's the one thing I would tell people if they're going through a career change and
Be
transition
the sponge.
abroad? I guess it's also be
Yeah,
a
because
sponge.
you're in a
But I would,
lucky situation that everything can influence you right now.
yeah.
Don't think too much about what you want to do, but maybe let like be guided by whatever you experience. Go out, meet people, talk to people, and maybe there's something you don't even can't think of right now.
And I would add to that because I'm so quick to leash on to like everyone and fully understand their opinion and be like, oh yeah, I want to make that mine. Is also find time to connect to
Hmm.
yourself, like whether it's sports or being in nature or whatever it is to decompress so that you can also listen to your own
Yeah,
intuition. Because if you're receiving so much information, I think you need equal amount of time to center and to feel your own your own voice.
love it,
I would add that.
love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Helena.
Cool.
Another good one.
Thank you.
Um,
This was
I'm
great.
excited.
Time flew by.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next one. And as always, I have even more energy than before.
Me too.
Love it.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks again, Philip. This was great. And we'll speak to you guys next time.